Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast. John here, joined once again by the main man himself, Michael Angelillo. Michael, how we doing, man?
We're good, man. The Bills are hot, can't complain there. Push is
So,
live, schedules out, all this. There's
right, there's
good
a lot
times.
going on. I mean, it's Memorial Day weekend. This is sort of like the unofficial start to summer. People are going
Yes.
down to the shore. People are opening up their pools.
Not with this weather, but
Maybe not with this weather, but barbecues, whatnot, and
people are getting after it.
people are going out. I went outside today to go run across the street to get some coffee, and there's barely any traffic out on a Saturday morning, which is pretty rare in the Delaware Valley at this time. This time of day. But yeah, man, we're moving. So you are freshly graduated from school.
Yes.
You are done. You're done school for the foreseeable future,
Yes.
which means you have plenty of time to watch sports.
Yes, I do at the moment.
Right. So NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs, we're in the conference finals for both sports, and the more I'm watching these games, like obviously, like the Florida Panthers they're probably gonna either sweep Carolina or win in 5 games.
So we've seen some crazier stuff, even in the second round. I mean, when the Leafs went up 2-0 against Florida, and the way they went up 2-0 against Florida, I thought it was like, okay, looks like this is the part of a team that goes to back-to-back finals that is clearly exhausted and is just going to run out of gas. And usually you run out of gas in the second round. I think back to the Penguins in from 15 or 2016 to 2018 when they won back-to-back cups the first 2 years, and then they ran out of gas and lost in the second round to the Capitals, who that was, Ovechkin and that team's first time breaking through the second round. They ended up going all the way and winning the Stanley Cup. I kind of thought maybe this was going to happen with the Leafs. I thought, it was the perfect matchup for them to break through. You get a team, while very experienced, very gassed. And yeah, they didn't break through. They ended up losing the next 3 games and then forcing game 7 where they just got embarrassed. So, point being is that just because you're up 2-0 and dominate the first 2 games of a series doesn't mean it's over, but you trust with the championship DNA that the Florida Panthers have that they should be able to weather any sort of comeback, especially now that they're on home ice for games 3 and 4. Carolina, they just seem to do this every year. They kind of handle the bad teams in the playoffs or the teams that aren't as good or talented or experienced. They handled up the um, who did, oh, the Lightning, or no, who did Carolina play in the first round?
So they played the Devils, but Jack
Devils in the
Hughes
first round,
got
right?
that. But Jack
Right.
Hughes is injured.
Yes, and then they played Washington, who, despite having the most points in the East, it just like they lost a lot. Like Ovechkin wasn't scoring at such an insane clip anymore, and their offense took a big hit because of it. Like they had a great offense during the regular season, but a lot of it, I mean, Ovechkin put up like 40 goals at this age. It's pretty remarkable, and it's not that he was
They were also
bad.
banged
It
up
just
too. I think the Caps were also
yeah,
banged up as well. And
and
then
maybe this is just Carolina, their coaching style with Rindamore. They always just kind of they disappoint, I'll say. So yeah, it looks like Florida's going to head back to their third straight Stanley Cup, but crazier things have happened for sure. And then across on the West, once again, it's a state with no income tax, and then the best player in the world in the Western Conference Finals. It's sort of becoming a trend with the NHL, as Florida is also a state with no income tax. So you're seeing those teams being able to spend a lot more lucratively. And then if you don't have any of those, if you're not one of those teams, you need to have the best player of this generation with Connor McDavid in order to carry yourself a certain way. So it's interesting what it's becoming, but that West Finals is going to be a pretty good series. That was a good game, even if the score ended up poorly. The Stars came roaring back. I will say the NHL has an announcer problem. I like Sean McDonough, but I think hockey is just not where he's best suited at. I think he's better with football. Um, he's the lead top NHL announcer for ESPN who covers, similar to the NBA. ESPN gets one conference final and TNT gets the other one. And Sean McDonough, the top ESPN announcer, is just not very good. Like, we're watching this Stars Oilers game. There's big chances going on, going back and forth, and you're just not getting any excitement. Like, he's kind of slow to react. He doesn't match the moment with his voice. And it totally makes the game feel less important. It, like, absolutely makes the game not feel as big when you think of, the great Mike Emmerich calls or in your, childhood with the great Gary Thorne calls where there's, shots off the post. Like, McDavid hit a post on a 2-on-1 shorthanded chance, and then the Stars went back the other way and nearly scored, and it's like, that's a crazy sequence that he should have been freaking out about in the booth, and like the puck hit the post, it goes to the corner, he goes, and McDavid rung that one off the post. And it's like, you got to give me something more because it really does actually affect the feel of an important hockey game when the announcer is slow and not as exciting for what's actually taking place on the ice. Like I didn't realize how much an announcer actually elevates moments to make it feel a lot better in the game of hockey because everyone's like, oh, hockey playoffs are so exciting, which they are. But when you have a bad announcer, it definitely stales it a bit.
Yeah, like so I know he's washed up now, but like Al Michaels, when you look at a lot of his historic
Yes.
calls, like the 1980 semifinal for the men's Olympic hockey game where he yells, "Do you believe in miracles?" That
Yeah.
elevates the moment. It does. It really does elevate the moment.
And
Or
let's talk about Joe Davis with the Phillies run and those great calls that he was making in 2022. Those were fantastic.
what, dude? I don't think I've gone a single day on Twitter without someone quoting, or is this the dagger? You know,
Yes, great call by, Kevin Harlan. Like, it's just there's announcers just make moments, man, and I think Bob, Wischushkin, who's the other, like, top ESPN hockey announcer, but he's not the top one. I think he's much better at this point than Sean McDonough, and I think he would be better suited doing it because he matches it with his excitement. It's no Mike Emmerich, but it's better. It's considerably better, and this is, it definitely it doesn't make it feel as big, and I'm not sure what channel the Stanley Cup's on. I think it's on TNT, if I'm not mistaken, because the NBA gets ESPN. So, yeah, we'll see.
yeah. You know,
Otherwise, though, the playoffs have been very
I
entertaining in
think
the
even though the
NHL.
Stars lost last night, I feel like they're going to outmatch Edmonton because, like, Edmonton's defense and their goaltending. Yeah, they got a shutout last night, but I
It feels like that series goes 7.
it does feel like it's going to go 7, and I just feel like the Stars are more of a complete team. I don't know if I don't know if you shared this with me or if I just shared it with you, but there's this crazy stat where no team has ever gone to the Stanley Cup, or sorry, has won the Stanley Cup, paying a player higher than $10 million
10,000,000. Yeah, I saw that, but someone did, like, the percentage of cap thing because I don't know, I think that's more accurate, like, for the times. So, like, Chris Pronger, when they won on the Ducks, uh, his contract was under 10,000,000, but in terms of, like, percentage of the cap adjusted to today's cap, it was over 10,000,000. So, yeah, it's interesting the way you look at that, but I do think that it's more accurate to compare it to the adjustment of the cap. Like, a player making $8,000,000 a year in 2005 is probably gonna be the equivalent of making over 10,000,000 today.
Right, exactly. I just think
But,
it.
yeah, it's
So
still
I do
something.
think that's a very good
And
so
Peter DeBoer
segue
being,
to the Flyers.
yeah, Peter DeBoer, the head coach of the Dallas Stars, what is he now? 9-0 in game 7s? So, it'll be interesting if it does go to another game 7 if he's got another one in him, so but yes, pivoting to the Flyers and high AAV, um, you know, the Flyers are looking to add some players, looking to add some big talent, and the big name that's floating around that I honestly would want them to go get is Mitchell Marner. Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs, um, likely to be a free agent in the offseason and is going to command a lot of money. He's coming off an 100-point season, had like over 70 assists. Um, I think would be a really nice fit alongside Michkov. Granted, he is a winger. However, he came into the league as a center. I'm curious to see if I guess we'll find out if he's open to being a center. But even if he's not, I still think there's room for him. It's no one's fault but their own that they'd be paying Owen Tippett $6 million a year to be a third liner. No one forced them to do that. That's just what they did, and he probably belongs on the third line anyways, Owen Tippett. So I wouldn't be too upset if you know Marner was playing with Michkov or Konechny. I think both of those guys would really see a jump of production playing alongside Marner. And if anyone out of the core group of Maple Leafs are the least of playoff chokers, it's definitely Mitch Marner. Even though he's not scoring a ton of goals, he is point per game in the playoffs in his career. So, I wouldn't mind. Point is, I wouldn't mind having a player that is a second round choker on this team, considering, they're not very close to the second round. I'd like to get to the second round to see if a guy is going to choke again before making "Oh, I'll pass on this 100-point score because he struggles in the playoffs." It's like, dude, we need to make the playoffs. We need to get to the playoffs first before I
Yeah,
can care
I would
about that.
say I think so. This is kind of my take on the Flyers fan base, especially the online fan base. There seems to be two groups of people. There's um the super analytical like people that just, I don't want to say they're contrarians, but
Mhm.
they never want the Flyers to. It's like it's the irony is that they're both sides are hypocritical.
Right.
So the anti Mitch Marner people are like, the Flyers are devoid of talent, and that but they talk about like they're like doing constant like Denver Barkley posts and like Alex Bomp and like basically like guys who are kind of overrating right now because of what we saw in the Frozen Four, basically saying they don't need to go out and make any moves, but like the way this team is constructed, they are lacking talent. So no, we don't. Well, we shouldn't sign Mitch Marner because or any free agent because we're nowhere near competing. We need to like
No,
basically
you need some players here, man. You
like
need
the whole like I don't know, like if you think like after clearly watching the last NHL draft lottery, you're out of your goddamn mind if you think the Flyers are getting the first overall pick, even if they lose all 82 games in regulation next year.
No, and it's like the idea of tanking with this Flyers team is like, John, they couldn't have been much worse last year, to be honest with you. Like, they had the worst goalie tandem in the league by a large margin and one of the worst, like, worst power play again, like bottom three power. Like, there's parts of the team that just, it's almost impossible to be as bad, let alone get worse. And you're not moving off those contracts that are actual, like, solid players. Like, that's just not going to happen. So the dream of tanking would be to really just kind of run back the same exact team and hope that you just get even worse results from what you already had because they tanked about as hard as they could. I guess they could have kept the head coach, and that might have made a difference the last like 12 games or so. But even then, I mean, they still finished like fifth worst or whatever it was, fourth worst. But yeah, I think that just sitting on your hands because 'cause you're like, "Oh, we'll wait for the guys to come out." I think if you wanna get some sort of value out of, like, the Couturier contract, which we all agree maybe isn't the best contract, it would be to try to gotta get some guys now and kinda start prying open the window a little bit to being in a decent spot of, relevance because I think, Couturier, despite a drop off in his offensive game, was still a very, very elite defensive forward last year. Was still very, very good in that regard, and actually
Oh
was a
no,
pretty decent offensive producer, by the end of the season.
That's the thing. I don't think Coots is as bad as people say they are. If we're gonna rip on Coots, then we should also rip on a guy who I really like in Tyson Forster by saying he had a sophomore slump, which he kind of did for most of the season until Torts got fired, and then all of a sudden now he looks like he's a top six
Yeah, and it's
forward.
you watch him playing in the men's World Cup here, and you're seeing how good he's playing alongside some elite playmakers on Team Canada, playing with Nathan MacKinnon as his center, where Forster's using his big body to win puck battles and then feeding it to, Nathan MacKinnon instead of Noah Cates. You know how big of a drop off that is? That it's like, oh, Forster makes a great play, sets up Noah Cates, who doesn't do anything with it, and it's like it goes unnoticed. But if it's MacKinnon and we watch MacKinnon rip one bar down, it's like, man, that whole play started because Tyson Forster won that puck battle and dug in there and made a great pass. And it's like, yeah, you need some talent. Like a guy like Tyson Forster could take a big jump if he's playing alongside a much more talented center. And I get it. They're not going to add three centers that are really good this offseason, but it starts with one. It starts with one, and maybe Konechny doesn't fall off by February again like he does every season if he's playing alongside a better center. You know, Michkov
So
might break 100 points if he's playing alongside a better center.
So I kind of going back to my point about like the fan base. There's the other half who's like the anti tankers who are like
They're
they're
just sick
like
of losing.
they're sick of watching them lose because they're so used to seeing them win for decades,
Yeah.
be competitive for decades. But then they're like, oh well, I don't want Mitch Marner because he's a choker. Like basically it's
Can't
like
have it both ways.
they're both, yeah, exactly, like the fan base. It's sort of like you know my thing is like they're like, oh, I don't want so and so because he reminds me of Kevin Hayes, and you're like, no, like
Yeah, no,
I think
it's just a lot of it's just bad. Like here, a name that's being floated around that I don't want is Sam Bennett. I don't think he was ever that good in Calgary. Was a part of that trade that kind of sent Huberto from Florida to Calgary, um, and Kachuk as well came along with Bennett. So that was a huge trade that the Panthers made, by the way, that got them into contention. But Sam Bennett, for example, he's never had more 5-on-5 points in a season than Sean Couturier, and I don't think that that's like Sam Bennett's a fine player, nice player, but he's not a number one center. And it's like adding him to be your 1C alongside Konechny and whatever. I don't think we're going to see such a substantial difference from last year to this year. And I think giving that guy $8 million, where now you essentially have three players that are middle six forwards, four players really, if you want to count Couturier as well. Like Couturier, I would say Konechny, Tippett, and then it would be Sam Bennett of guys making $6 to $9 million that are really none of them are good enough to be first line players unless they're really surrounded with elite talent. So that's part of why I wouldn't want Sam Bennett, and I'd prefer a guy like Mitch Marner, who I know has the skill to be a number one, like
well,
a
I don't think
first line
anyone's going to
player.
pay Sam Bennett $15 million a year. I
No,
think
but he's gonna get, like, 8, and I don't want the Flyers to pay
he's going to
that,
get 8.
That's what the numbers that they're saying. That's where it's starting at least. Maybe he'll fall off, but if he has finishes a strong playoff run again, he might get in that 8 range, and that's not even if he's making 6, I don't want that. I'm already paying Owen Tippett $6 million to be nothing more than a third line
He's
player.
going to go. I think honestly, like I think the reason why like the Penguins and the Flyers are like the odds-on favorite is
The
because
Blackhawks too.
and the Blackhawks is because they have the cap space. That's the big thing. The Flyers have a ton of cap space right now, and the one thing I see is that they do have restricted free agents. They got to re-sign Tyson, Noah Cates, and Cam York. The thing is I don't think they're going to re-sign all three. I fully expect one of the I hopefully not Tyson Forster, and honestly, like Noah Cates is kind of like you look at him and then compare him to Sam Bennett. They're both similar players in the regular season. Obviously, we Sam Bennett because he's been in the playoffs so much. Like
You know,
obviously,
he's capable.
you know what he's capable. Like he's basically Keith Primo. Like that's Sam Bennett is basically Keith Primo.
Sure. And
And
like Keith Primo was brought, was on the Flyers supposed to be this great whatever, and he just wasn't.
he was a solid.
He was a good player. It's not like
Like
he
he's
sucks.
literally Sam Bennett. That's literally who Sam
Yes,
Bennett
it's a
is.
good player, but it's no like it's not Lindros, Like it's not what it was supposed to kind of replace. Like
Exact. Well, yeah. But here's my thing is I I feel like like people are saying, oh well, we got this cap space, we need to re-sign all these guys. I'm like, so our roster sucks, but you want to re-sign three guys like like
yeah, there
like we you
it's a
need to
lot
like you need to move off of one or two
something.
players.
Yeah. Honestly, there's a lot that they can do. There really is. It's really an open book kinda where they can just decide what they wanna do, and we can debate all we want, talk about what they're supposed to do, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. We have no idea. We have no idea what they're actually going to do. They're the second highest odds to land Marner behind Chicago, and it's no surprise why Chicago would wanna add a player like Mitch Marner, even though they suck, by the way, one of the worst teams in the league, but they wanna go pay a bunch of money to bring him in because you know what? They wanna pair Bedard with someone that's actually, like, capable of being elite and then watch those 2 dominate and maybe drag them, into a decent spot with some other moves, and I think the Flyers should be thinking that same sort of way,
And
but
I think they
we'll see.
are. I think the whole like them hiring Tocchet, like you don't make Rick Tocchet the highest paid coach in the league because you want to see what he can do to bring out the best in like Ryan Paling. No, it's because he wants
Exactly.
you want
He's supposed to attract players. That's a big reason that they stated why they hired Tocchet, so we'll see.
let's move to basketball. So yeah, like
We can
wow,
start with
they're
the playoffs. I mean, the
those
playoffs have
those
been
those play that
great.
well the second round was exciting.
Yeah, and this conference final, at least in the East, has been very, very good. The Thunder we'll start in the West because it hasn't been as good. The Thunder are just such a machine, and it finally feels like they're kind of finding a rhythm. Um, Defensively, they are just swarming, they're smothering. They have all these pest players that are really good on ball and off ball defenders. And then combo that with like the offensive engine that is SGA, who's, since getting the MVP awards and playing very well. And,
I've
you
never
know,
seen a
enough role
player.
players are stepping up and playing well
Dude,
too.
do you just find NBA Twitter just so insufferable when they talk
No,
about
it's awful.
like literally every player is like the most overrated player in history. You saw it with Embiid, you saw it with Jokic. Now you see with SGA where it's like some of the foul calls he gets are a little shisty, but
Mhm.
like Michael, Michael Jordan got a favorable whistle, LeBron got a favorable whistle, Kobe Bryant got a
Every
favorable
every
whistle,
star gets a
Dwayne
favorable
Wade got a
whistle.
favorable. Do you follow me here? Like
Yeah, every favorable star gets every really good star gets a favorable whistle. It's just what it is. And but the Thunder are just really good, and like they should have been kind of steamrolling their way to the finals. They won 2 game. They lost 2 games against Denver that they really outplayed them for essentially the entire it's kinda like how the Celtics lost to the Knicks, where the Celtics outplayed the Knicks for those first 2 games, and then they just couldn't hit shots down the stretch, and the Knicks slowly chipped away, and then all of a sudden, they went down 2-0. The Thunder experienced a couple of those losses as well, where they were outplaying them the whole game, started choking up at the end, and granted, that's the playoffs, that's how it happens, but now they're like just building leads that are insurmountable or teams that they're playing, the Timberwolves aren't making enough shots to even threaten a comeback. And that's what, they should steamroll through and they really should win the whole thing, but we'll see with the way the Pacers are playing as They are up 2-0 on the New York Knicks in a very different fashion than the way the Thunder are up 2-0, where game 1, tight the whole way. Knicks started to pull away. Felt like it was over by the middle of the fourth quarter, where it was tight entering the fourth, and then you blinked, and the Knicks were up 16 with 7 minutes left. They were up 14 with 2 minutes left, 2:30, and they were up 9 with 50 seconds left, and it was like, "Okay." And then missed free throws, couple steals, Aaron Neesmith hitting 6 straight threes, and all of a sudden, Halliburton's doing the choke celebration, and we're going to overtime. And it's
You got Reggie
really
Miller pointing at him like, "Yeah, that's
that
my
was
guy."
awesome. That was awesome.
I
That
mean,
was
as a
really cool.
Sixers fan, you definitely felt a lot of catharsis.
Oh, I'm absolutely loving this as a Sixers fan. I'm having awesome hate watches at the moment. But I will say that the Pacers are good, man. Like the Knicks, the Pacers, what is it now? Teams that are trailing by 7 or more points in the last 50 seconds of playoff games are now 4 and, like, 900 something, and 3 of the 4 wins have been the Pacers this playoff run alone. Like, that's unbelievable. And then game 2 was really the Pacers. It was almost like the opposite of game 1 where the Pacers started to pull away in the 4th quarter, but then the Knicks came roaring back and they got it within 3, but, Brunson airballed the game-tying 3 or whatever. Or no, he missed he airballed in game 1 in overtime, and then he missed the deep 3 to tie it in game 2. Pacers hit their free throws and they put them away. So, you're seeing what 2 different style of elite guards look like with Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton, where Brunson is your classic scoring guard. He's a consistent, relentless
He's Allen
scorer.
Iverson.
Yeah, it's like he can shoot, he can get to the rim, he can get to the free throw line, and he's very, very good at it. And Tyrese Halliburton is like a bigger version of Chris Paul, where he can when he's aggressive, because I think that's what his knock is, the lack of consistency with his aggression and scoring. He shot pretty poorly. He only had 14 points in game 2. However, you saw him still hit some big threes in the second half, as well as his facilitating abilities are just unbelievable. He drives, puts a lot of pressure on the defense, and he finds the open man who knocks down a shot. He's able to pass out of double teams and out of all this sort of stuff. And he's a really, 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 really great offensive engine
Yeah,
that
yeah,
can do both.
and look, Michael, I think not to we'll bring now we're gonna I'll bring this back to we'll bring this over to the Sixers.
Mhm.
Probably one of the worst trades to never be executed was when the Sixers could have had Halliburton and
It was like Halbert, Buddy Hield. Um, there was a third player in there that I can't think of for Ben and Tobias
the
and
Sixers
draft
shot it
picks.
down because they had to throw Matisse Thybulle in, who they basically traded away for nothing, regardless.
Yeah, that's hindsight was is tough there because I don't think
At
people
the
were as
time, I thought it was terrible. They turned it down. It was like that was the whole
well, at the time they turned
Daryl
it because they were
Morey's like, yeah,
shopping.
he's like, oh, the Sixers fans would trade Tobias Harris for a cookie.
Yeah, so it was like at the time, hindsight, I don't think a lot of people had the foresight for how good Tyrese Halliburton would become. And, you got James Harden, so you thought it was fine, but then you pissed off James Harden, so he left, and now you're kind of stuck where you're at. Um, but yeah,
So
dude, that'd be if Halliburton was playing with Embiid, oh my god, that'd be awesome.
so it's possible
Uh,
that the NBA Finals are going to be two teams that are basically built on trading Paul George.
yeah, the Thunder's entire core essentially started when they traded Westbrook and Paul George, but Paul George is what directly landed them Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, as well as draft picks that directly turned into their core essentially. Sam Presti whoring on those draft picks, not even moving a ton of them at the deadline to clean up their weaknesses, but it might not even matter because he built such a good machine that it is. And then the Pacers, a little further back for their build off of Paul George. They traded Paul George back in, I want to say, 2017
Heard they
to
got
the
Sabonis.
Thunder. They got some, yeah, they got Sabonis, and
They
the
traded
Pacers. I
Sabonis
just
for
want to give a quick
Halliburton.
shout out to the Pacers. Since I think 1990, uh, the only team to make the playoffs more times than the Pacers are the San Antonio Spurs, and they also have the second most conference finals in that time frame, like with the Spurs, behind the Spurs or whatever. Like they are just, despite the fact, not that they don't have star players, because they had Reggie Miller and they
Jermaine
had Paul
O'Neal,
George, and
Test.
yeah, so they had guys, but it's like for being a small market that is never really in the talks for landing big free agents or making big moves that like add these great star players. Instead, they draft and develop at such a high rate that doesn't matter what era, they're still competitive basically every year. And Paul George went to multiple conference finals against LeBron, those Pacer teams, and you know, in the Sabonis era, which was 5 years, they made the playoffs three times, and it was clearly like their downturn. But you're still making the playoffs three times, and you're competitive. You weren't as good, but you were competitive. And then since trading Sabonis to Sacramento for Tyrese Halliburton, and you've been slowly building up that core to now, where last year we were like, oh, the Pacers made a conference final. That felt like a fluke. All those teams were hurt, and the Knicks were banged up after a hard Sixers series. They've made it back, and I granted they are still, getting fortunate with some injury luck, especially with the Cavs. Three of their four best players were hurt in a couple of those games, but it doesn't matter, man. Like the to be able to just keep making it back, we gotta we can't keep calling it a fluke. You're not getting lucky all the time. You just You're well coached. You're a very fun team to watch. You get out in transition. You're very good defensively. You have a lot of pest guards that can all shoot and defend. Your bigs can shoot. When Siakam goes for 40 essentially and game, like he did last night, it's you can get beaten in a lot of different ways, and they play super loose, like they played, like they know that no one's giving them any credit, and they're not afraid of the moment. Like that's the biggest thing for a bunch of guys that they haven't won anything besides Siakam with the Raptors. None of those Spacer players have been like a legitimate winning team or anything, but it just doesn't matter. Pressure's on. They're drilling threes when they need to. They're getting steals when they need to. They're not missing free throws late in games and stuff. Like they are just a really fun team to watch, and I hope they finish off the Knicks with games 3 and 4 back in Indiana up
Well,
2-0.
I
So good
mean,
luck.
if you look at like the forgotten like good, he's a forgotten good head coach, and that's the Pacers head coach
Rick
Rick
Carlisle.
Carlisle,
Yeah.
who won a lot with the Dallas Mavericks,
Mhm.
won an NBA, beat the LeBron Miami Heat, former
Mhm.
coach of the year. He's been the Pacers head coach the past few years. If you look at the Pacers, they've obviously have gotten better under Carlisle than they were before.
Yep.
So, to me, I, if you look at what the team he inherited um, versus what they built the team into, like, I mean, he's a really good head coach. And look, on the Knicks side, like, I got to be honest, man. Tom Thibodeau, probably one of the most overrated head coaches of the last 10 or so years.
Mhm.
Um, he's considered partially responsible for Derrick Rose's injury problems because he never subs guys out, especially in the playoffs. And I
Oh,
think
they're
that's
up 12 against the Sixers with a minute to go, and he's rips his knee in half. So I don't know. Maybe he should have taken him out. The 8 seeded Sixers, by the way, not like the conference finals or anything. The first
right.
round of a 1-8. You know.
And if you look at that choke job they had in game one, part of it's bad coaching, not getting guys putting, coach them into being in the right position. But it's
Mhm.
also entirely possible, Michael, that the Knicks are just exhausted because you saw, like,
It was
remember
last year.
last year, like Josh Hart's playing like 40 plus minutes a game, And then the
He's
next
always
round,
like 48 plus minutes a game. Like he's full game. He barely comes out. No, for sure. And you look at the team that they built where they have a lot of really good defensive players, except for like Brunson, but it's fine because he's a guard and it's whatever. It's not a big deal. But Carl Anthony Towns is just not good defensively. And it was
never
it
was, and he's got bad knees.
no, and it anchored them. Like, he didn't play he only had 25 minutes played by towards the end of the 4th quarter, and he's on the bench, and it's because they had to have Mitchell Robinson out there for rim protection because Cat is just not a presence defensively, and Cat's a I like Cat a lot. I think he is a very, very good offensive player, like, some of the threes that he knocks down in momentum situations that are really like, "Wow, that was huge," or he was making big bucket after big bucket after
Yeah,
big
he's
bucket.
kind of like this generation's like Dirk.
Sure, but his defense was so bad that he had to be sat, and, they were losing out on his offense, but defensively, like, Cat had 20 some had, like, almost 30 points or whatever, and then you look at his plus minus, he was a minus 25, and it's like, "Dude, what are you doing out there defensively that you're just
Well,
getting
you saw
cooked
why T-Wolves
relentlessly?"
moved off of him, and people were shocked at what they, got back.
We
And
got Randall. And Randall's been nice, even though he struggled a lot in game 2, but he was really good in game 1. There's a big reason why that game was close for a while,
they got
so
the big ragu
mhm,
who
yeah.
didn't want to, who at first didn't want to be there, but now you see what's going. Anyway, back, I'm going to kind of bring this around to the Sixers though. So look, it was floated around that, and this was not an actual rumor; it was just an idea that the Sixers would shop three and to get Giannis, which I would take a lot more than the third overall pick in a two-player draft, and like maybe like Paul George, because right now Paul
Yeah,
George has absolutely no value whatsoever.
yeah, you see the trades get floated around. If you were gonna actually do that, like, genuinely, you have to trade definitely would have to trade probably Maxey and then also potentially McCain, and then it just leaves you with and
Nothing.
you can figure it out because you got Giannis and Embiid, and hopefully that's enough or whatever, but I don't know. I don't think they're gonna trade 3. Um, I'd be kinda surprised, but, Daryl's known to get creative. Listen, I'll say this, if Daryl Morey's been good at anything since he's gotten here, he's been very, very good at drafting. He's been absurdly good at draft selections. Um, taking Maxey, taking McCain, Adem Bona, signing Justin Edwards as an undrafted free agent. Like there's a big part of me that trusts the Sixers development staff at the moment and scouting and drafting where I feel like no matter who they take at 3, whether it's Ace Bailey, whether it's BJ Edgecombe, whoever, I do trust that they're gonna turn them into a good player, formidable player, because that's just what they've been doing since Morey's gotten here. It's a lot of years of just producing solid players, and, I think that I think I think trust is to be deserved, like, in that regard. Maybe not with some other things, but as far as drafting goes, I think they deserve some trust.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. I do find it funny. No, I do find it funny that everyone's that the as soon as the Mavericks won the lottery, there was talks about teams calling them about the number one pick, and they've obviously shut those. The league would not
No, that's not
if
happening.
the lottery was rigged for them to get Cooper Flag. Most certain, the only scenario I could see them trading that pick is to get Giannis.
Yeah,
Like when the Cavs won the lottery for Andrew Wiggins, and then they traded
exactly.
to get
For
Kevin Love.
Kevin Love, yes.
Right. You know. Anywho, so let me ask you, Michael. Do you want to talk about the Phillies, or do you want to pick the Eagles schedule? I think we should talk Phillies, and we end with the schedule.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, man, Phillies. So big
They're
news.
streaking, John.
Well,
They
well,
are
well.
streaking.
No, with it. Well, there was. Let's get the big news out of the way. So a certain left-handed reliever got popped for PEDs
Yeah. Jose Alvarado, it sucks, man. He's one of my favorite guys on the team, one of my favorite people on the team. Has been for, since he got here, to be honest, which is back in 2020 now, or 2021, 2021, I think. Um, just sucks, man. It really does. I think it sucks because if you actually look at it from like a human perspective, Jose Alvarez has been pretty vocal about like his weight and like self-conscious about it. Like clearly has been wanting to lose it for a while. And I thought he looked skinnier in the off season, and I was like, I think he looks skinnier. I saw all the clips he's posted of him in the gym, and I was like, he's working out. Looks like he dropped some weight. Velo's back up. I was like, this is awesome. And then it turns out it makes total sense as to why that happened. Where I think he was taking something to help him lose some weight, and then he was taking some excess testosterone to help keep the muscle up. And I don't think it was like one drug because I don't think there's a weight loss drug that actually adds testosterone externally from your body. It can help you make more testosterone, but that's not
Well,
what
yeah,
they
I
what
think
they
yeah,
popped him for.
I think the belief is he was on like Ozempic or
Something
some weight loss drug. He lost a bunch of weight, but he also lost muscle
muscle.
mass. So he was doing a testosterone booster to, get that muscle back because the baseball offseason, Michael, really is not that long
Yeah, and
between.
it seems like he got popped in the off season and then like he didn't test positive afterwards. So I don't know how that works of out of your system, whatever. But it seems like he tested positive for it in the spring, and then when the season started, he passed both tests, and the league was just like, "You know what? I think we gotta I don't know what we're supposed to do here," and they just suspended him. So, the
Well,
biggest r
and look, they probably wanted to make an example out of him because,
well, I mean,
you
this
know,
is what it is. Like, it's not even this is just Jurickson Profar, great example. Career guy who if you look at his baseball savant page for his whole career, seems to always have a good approach, seems to always, whatever. And then randomly, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Jurickson Profar is just hitting the ball a lot harder. Nothing's changing except he's hitting the ball harder. And we're like, oh, wow, the Padres development staff must have figured something out with his swing. The Padres must have really, you know, they must have figured something out. And then he tests positive for PEDs when he gets to the Braves and he gets suspended, popped 80 games. It's like, okay, and it's not the 80 games. Alvarado being out for 80 games, I almost couldn't care less. Like, it sucks, but it's not a big deal. The biggest part of it is you're out for the playoffs, not being able to pitch in the postseason. And granted, that's why it exists. It's a good rule. That's what keeps guys from doing it. Not the 80 games, but the fact that you can't pitch in the playoffs. And that's a huge miss for the Phillies. Cannot be cannot be understated, cannot be emphasized enough how big of a loss that is for the Phillies with the way he was pitching. Um, yeah, yeah, it definitely sucks. It opens the door to a lot of different possibilities on how to fix up the bullpen now because you probably needed an arm anyways, and then you took away your best
yeah, I mean, if
guys.
we
Now
were
you
ranked the
really
five
need an
most
arm.
important Phillies entering the season, he was one of them. Now you don't have
So
a guy like that anymore. So
yeah,
you're absolutely correct. They have to go out at the deadline and acquire now two relievers, one to
probably,
kind
yeah.
of one to be to basically be a constant, like sixth, seventh inning presence because the guys you've been shuffling out there you've had mixed success. And look, maybe Max Lazar or somebody else in the minors, like a Seth Johnson, maybe could be that
Yeah,
guy.
you have a lot of options at this point. They've already started signing a couple guys to some minor league contracts. Lucas Sims, not guys that are necessarily needle movers, but you're
Lucas
signing
Sims, potentially Hoffman 2.0, former
sure.
Cincinnati Red.
You're signing guys with the hope that one of them pops or you get like streaks of good pitching and you kind of just piecemeal it together until the deadline because you know I bring up the Orioles all the time because they are just so grossly underperforming and they have good bullpen arms to sell and they need starting pitching and obviously we know the Phillies have a multitude of that. But for no other reason other than the fact that, you know, teams just don't sell early, they're not going to start trading guys away in May,
No,
even though they
we're not gonna
should.
see
Like, it's
moves
not they're not
until
getting they're not figuring this out. They're not turning it around. It's not happening.
unless
So
you're the Marlins.
right, where like that when the Marlins traded a rise, it was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they traded a rise so early." And like, that's because the Marlins don't care. So, until the trade deadline when you can actually start calling teams and getting earnest like negotiations going, they're going to try to add some veteran arms. They're going to try to call people up and they're just going to see what they have. They're going to, like you said, Lucas Sims. They signed another guy that I'm blanking on. David Robertson's been floated out for a while.
Yeah, I'm not exactly enthused with a third go round of
Listen,
David
I would
Robertson.
try it. There's no what's the harm at this point? You know what I'm
Well, because
saying?
it's
Like there's
failed
no
it's failed the last two times, and it's getting to a point where it's
I wouldn't
like,
say it failed in 2022. I'd
yeah, it
say
kind of did. He
it
was
failed
really
because he broke his leg or whatever the hell he did. Or he
well. He
took
wasn't that great before then, and then he injures
well, he
himself
pulled his
celebrating
hamstring.
the Harper home run.
Listen, go look at his playoff stats in 2022, and then you get back. They were pretty damn good, man. It made no sense that they were good. I don't think he knew where the ball was going, but he got outs. And last year was actually a pretty good reliever. I am a little surprised he's gone unsigned. I know he's old or whatever, but I am a little shocked
Because they
that
probably
no team is.
anticipate a massive fall off because of his age.
Or he's just waiting around because he's like, you know what? I'll pitch for a half a season, not a full one, but I'll pitch for a half a season on a contender instead of
Like,
betting my money
yeah,
on
it
this
is
team
kind of weird
being
because
good.
like JD Martinez is unsigned, and look, he wasn't great last year for the Mets, but
No, but it's just like I don't know, it just feels like a guy that's capable. I don't know. But whether it's David Robertson, whether it's any of the bullpen guys you mentioned, like Max Lazar or Seth Johnson, or whether it's some starters. Maybe Mick Abel was a reliever last year, and then they brought him back to be a starter, and he's been great in the minors. And a lot of people said his outing against the Pirates on Sunday was the best outing that he's had as a professional, like better than anything he's ever done in the minors, which I think I could believe. He was disgusting against the Pirates. Um, so maybe you don't want to mess with that, but maybe if you have to, I don't know. I think
well,
when the playoffs come
from what
around,
I
now it's
watched
a
of Mick Abel,
certainty.
what I watched with Mick Abel was to me was that he looks like a big league starting pitcher. Now, can he be a great one? I can't say that, but to me, you see, because you see some of these guys, you see some of these prospect profiles. The guy that I was like, this guy has no shot of ever consistently pitching in the big league was Adonis Medina because he was so skinny. You
Hmm.
know, like Mick Abel physically looks like he can be a big league pitcher.
Yeah,
Uh,
and mentally, he like a big credit to him. Uh, his turnaround is his mentality. They gave I read the article about it. They gave Caleb Cotham a lot of credit that he helped mentally with McGable. Excuse me, where he was like more emotional pitcher on the mound, like good or bad, showing the emotions. Kind of getting up with a good thing, getting down with a bad thing. And I think Caleb Cotham helped turn him into what they said in the article, a silent assassin. And, you know, go watch his Pirates outing again. I don't think he cracked the smile once. The game was over, and I don't think he cracked the smile. So I hope he's not like
well,
depressed out
I
there.
do
But
think didn't the
you know,
Phillies like overhaul like all of their minor league like their coaching staffs and like kind of how they approach their minor league systems since they went to Preston Mattingly as the GM.
well, since like it was Brian Barber back in like 2020, right? I think
Yeah,
2019 maybe. Since that, when obviously Barber has since left, but like Preston Mattingly, since Brian Barber came in though, he did the total like overhaul, and they've been drafting better since then. They've been betting better international signing, better development of players. Like just all of it has kind of been better since. And Caleb Cotham is like the Phillies Jeff Stoutland, where like he can never leave. He can never ever leave. He is way too important to this team. Um, what he does with pitchers, minors, majors, whatever, is just magic. And I really, really, like the fact that Mick Abel turned into actually a solid pitcher this year. When I was pretty much done. I was done with him after last year. I was like, this is just bad. He could never make the transition from Double A to Triple A because that's different baseballs. But maybe he doesn't become a bullpen piece. I think he could be a valuable one. But I think without a doubt, when the playoffs are around, Ranger will absolutely be hitting the bullpen. They might even do that by the end of the regular season, um, just to kind of get him ready for it. Because you look at a team like the Mets, for example, a team like the Cardinals, who have both been playing very good baseball this season. Max Kranick on the New York Mets, failed starter with the Pirates, has turned himself into a very valuable arm where he can throw like 2 to 3 innings like 2 to 3 times a week out of the bullpen for the Mets. Like, he comes in and he kinda bridges a shorter start, or he comes in a 4-run game and just finishes it, whether they're up or down, and it's just that's a valuable arm to have to give people rest, to pick up a starter, whatever it may be, and you look at the Cardinals, and they have Kyle Leahy, who's a very, very similar type of pitcher where he'll come in after 7 innings of whatever starter, and he's in there to finish the game. And it's a guy like whether it's, Mick Abel or whether it's Ranger come playoff time, that's valuable, man. That's a very valuable arm to have where imagine a scenario in the playoffs, Wheeler throws 7 innings and you can just turn to Ranger for to just kill the game, finish the game for me, throw me two innings and get me out of here, as opposed to having to turn to whatever reliever. Not that the guys that you have back there are bad, but it's just like it's just an option. Or Nola is still struggling, but he can give you 4, and then after 4, you can turn to Ranger for the 5th, 6th, and 7th, and now you're onto your bullpen, and you combine those 2 guys for a pretty good start. So it's an option, and I think it's something they're definitely gonna do when the playoffs roll around, but until then, I think they're gonna
I
be just throwing their
yeah
casting their wide net.
yeah I don't. So I one thing I see a lot of people suggest is turning both Mick Abel and Andrew Painter into relief pitchers for this year.
I'm not doing it with Painter. Not definitely not doing
Absolutely
it with
not with
Painter.
Andrew Painter. That is a terrible idea.
Coming off
He
Tommy John,
well,
like,
no, he is the future of your franchise. And you're like, whoa, what do you mean by that? It's, well, he is. He's considered to be the best pitching prospect in baseball. He is the best pitching prospect in baseball since Paul Skeens. And look how dominant he's been in the minor leagues. He doesn't throw as hard as Paul Skeens, but damn near close to it. And look, the
he's
whole
throwing as
like
hard as Skeens is now, who's smartly taking back his velocity so he keeps his arm healthy.
right. And if you look at Andrew Painter, like you look at the Phillies rotation going forward, there I would put the Phillies' chances of retaining Ranger Suarez right now probably at like 0 because
Yeah, I'd be shocked.
you need to have a spot in the rotation open for him, and because you have Sanchez, Wheeler, Nola all locked up to long term deals,
And they want to extend Luzardo,
Jesus was they probably want to extend Lazardo, and
and
then
they should.
they should because you're going to get money coming off the books for that, and then you have Andrew Painter on a for 6 years of team control.
Right.
Yeah, like yeah, the
And it's also like he is coming off Tommy John, and it's the way they've been rehabbing him and like warming him back up, easing him back up is as a starter. Again, it's totally not every starter can just go to the bullpen. That's why having Ranger is such a nice luxury where he can just go to the bullpen. Ranger's capable of that. But like a lot of guys simply aren't going to be capable of that. And like I don't need Andrew Painter, who's been doing what he's been doing, to all of a sudden have to go to the bullpen and try to reach back and give out 1 to 2 innings of like super explosive out of the bullpen type pitching. Like that's something that if you can work on it and trust it in the playoffs where he's going to throw like 3 to 4 innings, that's something that you can, and you're basically warming him up as a starter and he's going to come out of the bullpen, but it's like he's a starter. and pitch 4 innings, that's fine. But I think you need to kind of plan that Painter's going to pitch a certain day. It's like, okay, Sanchez has been struggling or whatever. Let's just make believe. And he's going to throw through the first time through the order against
Yeah, this
lefties.
is
And then we're going
not.
to go to
Yeah,
Painter.
this is
Like
not
it's,
like this is not David Price with the Tampa Bay Rays, where he hit his innings limit in 2008 in the minor leagues with
yeah.
the Rays, where they're like, "Oh, he can pitch an inning out of the bullpen, twice a week."
Yeah. Like we're not going to, it's not going to, playoffs aren't going to roll around and Painter's not going to be sitting in the bullpen hanging out like a closer and that's like, all right, get Painter up, we're putting him in. Like, no, I don't need his, that's not healthy for the arm. That's not good for the development. That's something that takes some legitimate time. Um, if you want to do that, you'd have to like start transitioning that. And I don't think the Phillies are going to do that.
That is an incredibly dumb idea, in my opinion.
Anyways, the Alvarado suspension really screws a lot of things up. For now, and also definitely for the playoffs. We'll see how they handle that. But despite all that, they've been winning. And you might say, well, they haven't been playing good teams. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to beat the shitty teams. They swept out the Pittsburgh Pirates and they swept the 4-game series on the road against the Rockies, which is never an easy thing to do, no matter how bad the Rockies are. Winning 4 straight in Coors is just difficult, and that is the first time in Phillies history, franchise history, that they've swept a season series of 7 or more games against one opponent during the regular season. Very, very shocked it's never happened once, but it's an impressive thing to do.
Well,
It's
it's
hard
very
to beat
hard
a
to
team
do.
7 times. Yeah, it's very hard to do, and they did it, and they won last night. They got some insurance off Mason Miller. Jordan Romano struggled for the first time in a while, and I'm going to give him a pass and say it's because of the shitty mound that isn't the Sacramento minor league ballpark. Because Zach Wheeler complained about it, and if Zach Wheeler doesn't like something, I can imagine no one likes it.
Well, we can complain about, I would buy more into the mound being crappy if last night's game was like 12-11 and then Wheels gave up 5 earned runs, because then I can go and say, well, the mound's terrible. They're
Well, to
playing
be
in
fair,
the.
I think Wheeler wouldn't have complained about the mound if he got rocked. That just doesn't feel like the type of thing Wheeler does. Like he pitched well, so I think he was like, you know what, I
I
have
think
air to
I think
complain
the
about this.
concern. I do think Jordan Romano's bounced back, but also too, Michael. I think the overarching arching concern with Jordan Romano, and you sort of alluded to it just a few minutes ago. Yeah, they're playing crappy teams, but they're still winning, which is true. Like,
Hmm.
but the concern's going to be if they got to go when eventually got to start playing, the Mets and the Braves. That if Romano goes in there and just gets lit up again, then to me it's almost like it is not a skill issue. Maybe it's sort of the expectations of this team, because Michael, realistically, the Phillies are now have as of March 24th, 2025, the best record in Major League Baseball.
That's good, man. And
Which is good. Listen, and hey, man, I'm not poo pooing it. That's not what I'm saying.
no, no, like
But dude,
there's
if I see like Kirkering and like throwing his glove at the wall because he got lit up, and then you see Romano not being able, like, it's a big difference pitching in Toronto for a mid
John.
baseball team.
Listen, I get it.
You need to
It
have that
is.
mental toughness, which Alvarado had. Now it's
I
like,
think I think Romano does. Like I'm looking up. I pulled up his game log, and before last night, the last time he had given up a run was the Mets outing where in extras with it was the outing where I felt like Alonso hit that double the other way on a pitch that I didn't think was that bad of a pitch. It was the slider down and away, and Alonso went out and drove it. So that was April 23rd. And since then, he went 1 inning to save against the Cubs on Sunday Night Baseball, where he didn't give up anything. No, one strikeout, no hits, no walks, no runs. And then an outing against the Diamondbacks, 1 inning, no hits, no runs, no walks. another one inning outing, 1 hit, 1 walk, no runs against the Diamondbacks, and then an outing against the Rays, Guardians, Cardinals, 2 against the Pirates, and 1 against the Rockies. So it was like since the Mets outing, he had gone uh 8 innings, I think, yeah, 8 innings of no runs, 1 walk, and 13 strikeouts. Like, that's really good, man, and a couple of those were against really good teams, like, 2 against the Diamondbacks and 1 against the Cubs. Those are some of the best offenses in the sport. So, I think he's fine. His velocity was down last night. Wheeler said he couldn't push off on the mound and explode. I would assume that that was the same for everybody.
Yeah, but
Whatever.
Michael, only 7 runs were given up. I understand it wasn't ideal conditions.
I mean, listen, sometimes you're just not gonna be able to
I
hit.
mean,
Like, I
Michael,
don't
right
know.
now, I mean, here's the thing, though,
The
Michael,
Phillies struggled against the
is look,
Rockies
I don't
starter
think.
too.
Here's the thing, though. I'm looking at Jordan Romano. I got Jordan Romano's stats pulled up. He's got a negative .7 WAR, an
Because he has an
8.05 ERA,
ERA, like, yeah, but you know how hard that
1.526
is.
WHIP. I mean, that here's the thing, though. Like, he's basically, in order for him to kind of build that trust, he's got to go like the next like 6 to 8 weeks, only allowing maybe 3 or 4 runs. His problem is when he gives up runs. He doesn't give up like 1 run, and it's like, well, he gave up one. It's not a big deal. It's it's they're up by 3. He gives up a solo shot, but he gets the next 3 guys out. He tends to like blow up. Is the problem? That's the
I
problem.
yeah, they
Which
like
means to
last.
me, he may be better suited in like the 7th inning because he gives you 6 more outs to kind of come back and make up that if you're then down by a run.
I mean, I don't know. Watching him the last like since May started, it was pretty nasty. Like no one was touching him. He was getting 6 inches swings off like the ball. Um, it was dominant. Like it was passing the eye test as much as it was like, oh, not good hitters. He was locating. He was doing what he was wanting. What he was last night is he couldn't throw strikes. He was not able to find the zone, and the velocity was down, and he gives up the 3-run home run because he fell behind 3-1 and didn't want to walk the bases loaded. So he grooved a fastball right down the middle, just praying it gets hit into an out, and it was a home run. So I think he's going to be fine. I really do. I think maybe he was a little. He looked gassed too, to be fair, which I don't you know, he did pitch the day before. I thought it was fine though for him to pitch yesterday. I think he could use probably the rest of this series off if possible. That would be cool. That's a lot of that falls on the offense being able to score a lot of runs to give him that break. But I do think the 3 guys in the bullpen, Romano, Kerkering, and Strom, I think they're going to be fine. I do want another one at this point. I need another one for the playoffs to really trust, and maybe that just ends up being Ranger, which, like, okay, I guess that's fine, but for now, I think it's fine. I wanna pivot to the offense because that's also been something that's gotten a lot better across this win streak, and they continue to put up runs and good at bats against bullpens, even if they struggle against starters like they have. They did a couple times in the Rocky series, and they did last night again, but they're able to just add and kill the bullpen, and it's exactly what, they did to Mason Miller yesterday. They did it to the Rockies bullpen. They did it to the Pirates bullpen. It's been all season that they battle against teams' bullpens, and that's encouraging for sure. And then individually, Alec Boehm has been a lot better. It's been like what he normally is, which is a lot of singles. He's starting to hit more
Yeah,
doubles
usually when
now.
the fans crash out on Bohm is when he usually bounces back.
Yeah, so he's been good. Trey Turner's been very, very good. He's seems to be unlocking his more powerful sort of swing, like just driving the ball into gaps as opposed to just hitting everything on the
Well, I
ground.
think here's the thing with Trey Turner, Michael, and I think when we first signed him, and he was off to that god awful start to his Phillies tenure, I think I mentioned to you, I was like, dude, like if he just starts just getting on base, I think that's going to really help his confidence. He can be more aggressive when he's aggressive. He's not just being aggressive because he needs to make something happen. Teams when you're a guy that's very adept at getting on base, teams are going to approach you much differently than you're just a free swinging hacker. You know,
Yeah. You look at so Turner, Rob Thompson said that he told him, "I don't care how many home runs you hit, if you can get on base and hit 300, whatever." And he definitely like took that to heart because everything he was hitting was like on the ground, a lot of bloop singles, whatever, whatever. And he actually said it was interesting, Trey, that when he got hit by a pitch early in the season, I think he got hit on like the hand or the wrist. He said it created some bad habits for him. So I think he hurt himself a little bit, was playing through it, and then when it healed, he kept like swinging the certain way because his hand was hurt. And he said he made some minor adjustments, minor tweaks, and now he's starting to hit more gappers. He's starting to drive the ball a little bit better, and
yeah, he leads the National League in hits.
yeah, he's it's one of those things where I think he entered the season really focusing on just putting the ball in play. Contact is the number one priority and limiting strikeouts where I can. And he was getting pretty fortunate with it, high batting average on balls in play, just balls finding holes, some luck, good luck on your side. And then with that, he's been slowly kind of working on getting back to like a normal swing that can drive baseballs into the gap and home runs and whatever. And it seems like it's coming up into a little complete hitter here where like he can be really, really good for you. And that would be massive. So Turner's been great. Bohm's been very good.
Well, Turner's been great at the plate, but I do want to bring something up about him. And you brought it up to me about the Phillies' defense as a whole. Uh, yeah, their defense is cheeks.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
defense is very, very bad. So defensive run save is a pretty good metric in terms of just good defense. It considers situations as well. It's a good stat. And since the Phillies have been good, which is 2022, they've been pretty bad defensively, except for last year, funny enough. So in 2022, their total defensive run saved was negative 33, which was like bottom five in the league. In 2023, it was negative 30, which was also, bottom five in the league. Last year, it was plus three, which was like middle of the pack, which that's awesome, man. If the
Well, it's
Phillies
+3 because Brandon Marsh played every day and he's a good defensive player. This
be
year, he's
playing in left field like every
not.
day,
Yeah, and then you had Johan Rojas play a lot of games in center field.
well,
Uh,
Bryson Stott was incredible last year defensively. Harper was really good defensively last year. Those are the two big ones because if you look at this year, the Phillies currently sit at a negative 32 defensive run saved, which is like fourth worst in baseball. Which, by the way, negative 32, and it's May 24th. John, that's not good. They're on pace for like minus 70, which is awful. Anyways, if you want to know why that is, it's because Brandon Marsh, Bryson Stott, and Bryce Harper are not having good defensive years at the moment. Trey and Bohm are like themselves, which is not good. Nick Castellanos is definitely worse this year than previous. I think he's hurt, to be fair. I think he's dealing with an injury at the moment. That's just not really being let out. I don't know. But Stott, Bryce and Marsh have struggled, and Rojas too, to be fair, has not been as good defensively
well,
as he's supposed
Rojas
to
has
be.
had some adventures out in center field.
Yeah, and like Marsh has been not getting as good of jumps on balls, and balls been landing in front of him. He's also had some adventures. Stott, I feel like we haven't seen as many of like the incredible plays that he's made, and he's also had a
He's booted
couple.
some ground
He's
balls.
booted some ground balls as well as not making the elite plays that we saw at a high of a clip. And Bryce has also just kind of struggled with the glove. And I think, that's a big reason why they're so bad so soon. Like all those numbers I gave you, those negative 30s, those were full season marks there, John. They're negative 33 now. That's awful.
Well,
That's
I think
so
that also
terrible.
plays in part to the bullpen struggles early in the season. I remember watching games late in games. They boot some ground balls. And, you see it happen in baseball all the time. Bloop and a blast.
Yeah, John. And it's also like FIP is a pretty good stat in terms of pitching, where it is, fielding independent pitching. So it's It's a metric that looks at what the pitcher can control, which pitcher controls home runs, pitcher controls strikeouts, pitcher controls hard hit balls, basically. Balls that are expected to land and be base hits, not weak fly balls or dribblers that end up being hits. Pitchers can control that. The Phillies are second in baseball in FIP, and they actually have the highest pitching WAR by a decent margin in all of baseball. But if you want to look at a more traditional stat, which is ERA, they're 11th in baseball in team ERA. So venture me how the team that's second in FIP in baseball and first in WAR is 11th in ERA. Bad defense, terrible defense, in fact, because their pitching has been so
Yeah,
elite.
remember when I was
It's
like,
soft
I don't know if I
contact.
want to sign Bregman. He's kind of mid the last couple years for the Astros. Yeah, he's off like having a career year with
He
Boston
did
Red.
get hurt a little bit, but
Like
yeah, no. So,
we probably should have just
oh, yeah.
signed
So
him.
defensively, the Phillies have struggled a lot, and I fear that you know defense in the playoffs over the years, it hasn't really anchored the Phillies a ton. It caused some flare ups, some issues. I'm thinking of Reese Hoskins in 2022, but
Well, by
ultimately,
the
the
way,
defense.
someone floated out there a rumor that the
Yeah,
Phillies could bring Reese Hoskins back
he's
and
having a
then
great year. Reese is having a
put
great
Bryce
year.
Harper back in right field, and then you either platoon Casty because he's hurt, or you stick him in left. I don't know, but
You gotta figure something out. But anyways, this feels like it could be the year where the defense legitimately kills a playoff run. More than just like, "Oh, it was an insurance run that we allowed, but we didn't hit anyway, so it didn't matter." No, like, it might be like, the ninth, and they just misplay a ball, and they lose
well,
because of it.
if anyone, it's probably going to be Alec Boehm because he's like the whipping boy.
Could be anybody. I think it honestly my guess, like, not that I should be hoping any of this happens or whatever, but I think it's gonna be like Stott, where it's like you throw your hands up in the air, like, that's supposed to be your best fielder, and he's making the mistake, and it just the microcosm of the whole season,
You know
the
who's
defense.
actually I think improved his defense a little bit has been Trey Turner.
He he has, I think. It's about the same, I think, in the grand scheme of it
Fangraphs,
all.
he's not negative right now in
Yeah,
Fangraphs.
he's not booting the ball as much. The throws had, like, a period of sucking in, like, end of April, early May. He's been better. It's still not
Well, no, the
good.
thing
I
with
don't
so right
know.
now with Trey Turner, like you're this is what you paid for. Like you're getting
Yeah,
what you signed him
it's
for.
like a little below average defense and really good offensive player.
I will say this about the
I
Phillies
will
right now
complain about his
with
stealing,
this
though.
lineup, and I think you so like right now I feel like Max Kepler is like your first guy. He should be like your first guy. It's weird. Like the Phillies have this ish. Not it's an issue. Like should Edmundo Sosa play every day? Like
I'd
maybe.
like him in the lineup more than he is. I don't know if I can there's just not really a place to put him every day unless you wanna make him your everyday outfielder,
I think
which I don't know if I want
I
that.
think what the Phillies should do is which they will do, not maybe not this year, but most certainly next year, because you have so many guys on 1 year deals, it becomes easier to move them. They're going to want to consolidate their lineup where they want to add a big name and then move out two or three of these guys that are like in and out of the lineup at times. So you have like Max Kepler, who's going to be gone anyway. Then you have Johan Rojas, Brandon Marsh, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott, Casty, and Sosa, right? You'd like to have a guy like you could put every day, and then you can like platoon one position. Now you're like, well, we're gonna teach
No,
Edmundo
they're yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah,
teach
they've been
Edmundo left
platooning
field
3
because
positions.
we have problems there. You know,
Yeah, they've been platooning 3 positions, like sorry, they've been platooning 3 positions for the last, like, for essentially all year, especially when Weston Wilson came back, where Max Kepler, when it's a lefty starter, Stott's on the bench for Sosa, Kepler's on the bench for, um, Weston Wilson, and then, like, uh, Marsh is on the bench for Rojas. So, like, I think, honestly, like, Marsh has been really, really good since he's come back from the IL. He's got, like, an OPS over 900. Rojas with the bat has been cool as of late after his, really good stretch there, which made you not miss Marsh as much, but it's fallen off a little bit there. Kepler, I have a hard time complaining about because I feel like his at bats are pretty solid. He does hit the ball hard. He hits the ball hard on the ground, granted, a lot of the time, and feels like he just misses a lot of balls that, that's just kind of what he is. I'm not going to complain too much about it because I think that he's going to be streaky like everyone else on this team, and his good streaks are going to be like enough for me to be like, you know what, that's he's not even an everyday player. Like it's fine. Um, I think my issue event is with Weston Wilson. Like when he hits the ball, he hits the ball hard. He's just not hitting the ball nearly enough to make it worth it for me. Where I'm growing pretty close to just being over with the Weston Wilson like kind of experiment, I guess, to be the platoon guy. Like
Yeah,
I
and the fact that Otto Kemp now plays every day in left field in AAA is sort of almost
yeah,
telegraphing what
yeah.
they
Like
want to do.
I think I'd want to try Otto Kemp to see if he can make the transition and be a decent major league hitter as against like left-handed pitching
Because
because
here's the thing, though, when you're in AAA, what he's doing, like he's basically like, dude, I don't know. It's a shame we got the Rockies series out of the way. I'd be kind of interested if he stuck him in there against Rockies pitching, which is basically AAA pitching, right? What he would have done, you know?
yeah, I think they used that same logic for Weston Wilson to see if maybe he could hit his way
Yeah.
out of his
The thing
struggles and
is, though,
stuff.
Otto Kemp has been whatever Weston will like. If I look up here, I'm sorry, keep talking. I'll pull up Weston Wilson's minor league stats.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. So point is, this was originally about Sosa because Sosa's still hitting really, really well. He had like 4 hits the other night. Feels like he deserves to be in the lineup more than he is, and it's hard because I don't think they feel confident in him just sticking him out in the outfield, and as long as like, against lefties, he's definitely going to be in the lineup, and for now, it's for Stott, who I think that's a good idea because I do think Stott struggles against left-handed pitching a lot, so I think he deserves to be playing. I just maybe, I guess, more often you give Kepler maybe a day off here or there, maybe against right-handed pitching to where you put Sosa in left field against right-handed pitching sometimes. I mean, would you feel confident enough for maybe against right-handed pitching, you're giving Marsh the day off and playing Sosa in center field? My point is that when it's a right-handed pitcher on the mound, you're not gonna give Stott the day off. You're not gonna give Marsh the day off the way he's swinging it. So it would really just be Kepler or give Bohm an extra day off here and there. And the way Bohm's been swinging it, you're not gonna sit him either. So unless they wanna start giving Castellanos a day off, because I do really think he's banged up somewhere, but they're just not talking about it. Maybe I'm just
He's
way
played a
off.
lot of
Eh,
games since he's joined the Phillies. So the
yeah,
fact he
and
has
he's been
some sort of
struggling
like,
for a little while now.
yeah, if he has some sort of like injury because, strained, that he's, that's the thing. He's just been such a constant in right field ever since Bryce Harper in 2022 stopped playing outfield. Like he's been a
Yeah.
constant out there.
Well, it's crazy because he
The
was supposed
DH.
to be the DH when he was signed. Like he was gonna be the guy, the odd man out of the field. Like, John, if we could just go back,
It's pretty wild. They thought
if
that
we could
Kyle
just go
Schwarber was
back
going to be an everyday left fielder.
yeah, if we could just go back to opening day of 2022, just to chuckle at the batting order, um, I think it'd be fun. I did this a little while ago because I was like, "What in God's name am I seeing?" Leading off, playing left field, Kyle Schwarber. Batting second and catching, JT Realmuto. Batting third in right field, Bryce Harper. Batting fourth at designated hitter, Nick Castellanos. Batting fifth at first base, Rhys Hoskins. Batting sixth at shortstop, Didi Gregorius. Batting seventh at second base, Gene
Gene
Segura.
Segura.
Batting eighth at third base, Bryson Stott, because Bohm wasn't even on the team. And batting ninth in center field, Matt Vierling. Really, I guess we've come far, but we also haven't. The fact that Stott was starting at third base and like one of his very few games at third base, which he could not play third at all. Just crazy lineup when you think about it. That
Well, that's
the
Joe
plan was
Girardi.
Castellanos was going to be the DH all season long, and Schwarber was the conscious decision to play left field all the time. Really remarkable when you think about it.
Right. Anyway, so I'll say this with the Phillies right now. We'll wrap up Phillies talk, then we'll do tush push, then we'll wrap up the show.
Mhm,
So Bryce Harper, since this this head shaving thing now, that's now a
mhm.
thing because Sirianni shaved his head,
Dude,
won the
Joel might have to
Super
go
Bowl.
bald, man. Joel might have to go bald.
Yeah, we might have to. The Sixers next year might have to look like a bunch of might have to go do the Sirianni
Yeah,
look.
yeah,
The
yeah.
yeah, they might have to do that.
Mhm.
Um, they go the Charles Barkley look out
Yes.
there. They might have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bryce Harper, even though he cost me two parlays, I had a
Mm,
home run parlay. He was the only guy in my home run parlay not to get a home run, and
brutal.
that
That
brutal,
sucks,
absolutely
man.
brutal. So, but yeah, his hit streak's over. But yeah, he's been much better at the plate, much more of a complete hitter. People complained a lot since he got here. All he tried to do was hit home runs, swing out of his shoes. He's not more of a complete hitter,
The Phillies are not hitting home runs, I will tell you that. They
right?
are they are not the home run team that everyone likes to pretend they are.
No, you're right, and I like the complete hitting. Um, but yeah, now he's getting more drive on the ball. Um, yeah, that's desperately needed. They definitely desperately needed that power, him to be a power threat, especially because Kyle Schwarber, despite getting two home runs in Colorado, it's kind of cooled off a little bit at the plate. So
Yeah, he's not it's just a little
he's back,
cool stretch. He's
well, he's
still
back. He's back to yeah. He's never a guy that was going to hit 300 for
no, but
you.
he was on a his expected batting
Absolutely
average when he hit his 300th home run was like 288, which is absurd. It's higher than Luis Ariz, so it's pretty incredible.
right.
Um,
So
but he's gonna be just fantastic for the rest of the year. I'm not really
one
worried about
last,
that.
so the last thing I want to bring up is we're all talking about obviously having to re-sign Schwarber, right? Re-sign Schwarber.
Hmm.
I think that gets done. I would be appalled
Yeah,
if they don't re-sign Kyle Schwarber because they're in
yeah.
trouble. They're in serious trouble because they legit have no one in their farm system they could bring up and replace his what he does.
Hmm.
Um, JT is another guy that's a free agent.
Hmm.
He's getting
I he's been good, man. He
he's
just
been
has
good.
been.
He's been good, and I think
He's good. That's the why. Like I don't know. Since he's in a stretch where his OPS is over 800 for a few weeks now.
I feel like he's kind of now like the Phillies version. Like you said, Yadier Molina. I would say he's more of like Jason Varitek was for the Red Sox, where he's like this, almost like he is the because of his command of the pitching staff, and
Hmm.
he's a better hitter than Yadier Molina is. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. It's not even close. But Molina, it just I don't know. The contract for JT, I think, is just a little richer than we think it should be at this point. And hopefully it's not as bad. But we'll see. That will be handled all in the off season.
All right, are you ready to talk? We'll wrap up the show talking about well,
It wasn't banned, John. They didn't
they didn't ban
ban
now.
the tush push.
Now, do we take our tinfoil hats on? Do we put our tinfoil hats on? Is this even a it definitely felt like the. I guess I'll just go ahead and kind of summarize it because there's a lot to unpack here. So the tush push rule. Well, I guess we call it the Jalen Hurts rule. If they banned it, we'll call it. If they banned it, it would be the Jalen because that's who they're targeting. Um, the tush push has not been banned. It was voted 22-10 to ban it. They didn't get enough votes to ban it. And as far as I'm concerned, Roger Goodell can't rewrite the NFL's constitution to change it to where they only need a certain amount of votes to pass something.
Yeah,
Uh,
the league wants it banned. Definitively,
well,
the league, Goodell.
the league office wants it banned. Of the Eagles' opponents this year, 13-1 voted to ban it. Then, so in other words, the teams wanted it banned because
I don't
they
want to
just
deal
don't,
with it.
they don't want to deal with it. That's
Yeah.
right, you know. And the when that and I think in the court of public opinion, I don't think fans want to see it banned. And there's fans of their teams that voted to ban it that I've seen on social media that were legit embarrassed.
Yeah, it's a very it's polarizing. I think that both sides of the arguments are pretty like compassionate. I think that the people that want it banned that say
Or
like, "Oh, it's
16
just
year
not a
or
football thing."
16-year-olds who
They're
use
like, "It's just
players
not a
as
football
avatars on
thing,"
Twitter.
and whatever. Like the issue is that they're banning it for the fact that because the Eagles are really good at it and one team's really good at it. Like if everyone was good at it, I think they'd be like, you know what, this is unfair. We need to ban it because everyone's abusing it. And I think I would be a little more. I'd accept that honestly. If everyone ran a tush push and everyone was just converting fourth and ones at like an 88 to 90% clip because of it, I'd be like, okay, this is dumb. It's automatic every time. We can't like there's no stopping it. There's physically no stopping it. But the Eagles happen to have a really strong quarterback and a really great offensive line, and they've perfected it. They know how to run it. They win the leverage battle every time, and I I don't think that's something that's worth banning. And I think the Packers, honestly, rewriting the rule the way they did, I think they screwed it up again. I think it was awful. It was an awful rule at first, and then they were like, you know what, we're going to ban all pushing and pulling. And the last
And all
clause of
pushing
it
so it doesn't look like we're targeting the Eagles specifically.
yeah, because I think that was the way. Because a lot of the reasonings when they had the 50-50 split back whenever they had this at first, a lot of people said, like, "This rule, it's ridiculous. You're voting against something because the team's good at it." Like, it was absurd, and they would be more open to it if we're like, "Alright, we're gonna do all pushing," and that just really it targets the Eagles, sure, but it does affect other parts of the game. And I think people were more open to that. But the other issue is the last clause of the rule, the way it was written, it looked like it banned double team blocking because it said a player can only can only aid a runner by individually blocking, and it was like individual. So I can't double team somebody. I can't combo
Right,
block
and
somebody. Like
because then
that's
what
not
if you
individual.
ban double teams, Michael? Then what's gonna
You're
wind up happening?
changing the whole
Miles
fabric of
Garrett's gonna have like
football.
40 sacks next year,
Oh, but it's also like a team. You'll be
which would
like,
be
oh
kind of
wow,
awesome.
like
Not gonna lie, but
team.
like,
They're gonna be like, oh wow, teams the rushing yards per game has dropped, you know, 40 yards across the league per each game because teams can't combo block anybody on a running play. Like it would be
could you
so dumb.
imagine if they passed that rule? Because then we would then our discussion point's gonna be like,
You
oh
better
my
call
god,
every single
Kalen
one.
Carter can't get combo blocked anymore.
No, and you better throw a flag every single time you see it. I That's what I was honestly, what I was most intrigued by was, like, how strict are they gonna enforce the pushing? Are they just gonna blow a play dead when the pushing starts, or are they gonna start throwing flags on it? Because they would throw a flag for the tush push, but I'm imagining someone gets caught up 3 yards down the field, and here comes the offensive line to start pushing it, and they're just like, "Oh, plays dead, dead ball right here,
Well, no, it's a
not
10-yard
10-yard
penalty.
penalty." Well, that's my thing. My guess was I didn't think they were gonna throw penalties on that, just on tush push attempts, because that's the whole hypocrisy of it all. But didn't get enough to get banned, and a big reason, seems like, is because the Eagles went to work in terms of defending themselves and defending the play and defending the nature of competition, with Jeffrey Lurie speaking for about 45 minutes saying, which I thought, honestly, I think the funniest part of the argument was that, everyone's saying, "Oh, it's not a safe play, not a safe play, we're trying to be proactive on preventing injuries." And Jeffrey Lurie comes up there and he goes, "Actually, everybody, this is the safest play that the NFL has ever had." It's like, not like, "Oh, the play is safe." It's least there's not a play that's safer. It's the safest play in the
It's the
entire history of the
safest
sport.
play. There's no
Yes, that's
safer
that's what it was
play.
giving me.
It
It
is the
was
safest of plays. Yeah, because they're not
that's
moving fast. They're moving slow.
no. Well, and you're protecting the quarterback's in like a cocoon. Like, the quarterback is protected by bodies, and you look at the Chiefs don't run quarterback sneaks with Mahomes because he got hurt, because he hurt himself doing it. He hurt his ankle trying to push himself. When you're like fully, you know, in that cocoon, and it's like a wave, like the Eagles describe it, where they win the leverage battle and Jalen Hurts like surfs on top of the pile. That's that's how they are so good at it. So they won the vote. Jeffrey Lurie spoke for about 45 minutes defending the play, saying, "No matter what you guys vote, we're still going to win because we're walking out here with our rings that we're going to big dick you guys," basically. Um, was like pissed off the whole time. He goes, "If you do ban it, it's like a teenage boy with a wet dream because we came up with a play so good that you guys had to ban it," which everyone was like, "Jeffrey, he was
That's a
pissed.
very he could have said this
Could have
is
said
like
anything else. Could have
he could have
said
he could have
anything
just
else.
said he could have just said to because the Steelers, I think, did the Steelers voted to ban it. He could have went to like Art Rooney and said like your father had a player who had a rule changed, Mel Blunt, because he
Yeah.
was so good at it, and now you want to vote against me. This would
Yeah,
be the
no, for
biggest.
sure.
I could say like we basically proved the league how much of the paper tigers you are, how fake
Yeah.
tough you are, because we
Yeah.
shoved it down your throat for 10 minutes to prove how effing weak you are.
Yeah, they did it. Yeah. So besides all that, they also brought out Jason Kelsey to talk for like another 30 minutes, where he stated, because loosely the Bills owner Pagula said that Kelsey
By the
retired
way,
because of the
probably one of
tush
the
push.
worst owners in sports when you look at how pathetic the
Yes,
Sabres are.
yes. So Kelsey said, like, if I could just run 60 tush pushes a game, I'd come back and play today. Which I know we're not forgetting that he said that running the tush push is like, he talked about how much he didn't like it when he first started running it. We know that happened. I think we're not
He
having like a
definitely
Mandela
said that,
effect.
but I think the point he's saying was a lot of the
It doesn't cause an injury. It
concussions
was
and
just like a
injuries was probably like pulling on a play and having to like block someone high speed.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he defended the play. Seems like that helped convince people. Um, some interesting takeaways from what other
Well,
owners
no,
said.
you're forgetting what happened afterwards. That they basically had to the tweet that I saw, which I think was misworded, was that the when the Eagles were talking about like when they were going on, the owner of the 49ers, Jed York,
Oh,
said, he's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
are you gonna shut the F up? It basically told
Yeah, he
Jeffrey
said to
Lurie
Jeffrey, "What else you got? What else? Is
he's
there
trying to big
anything?"
league him basically. And
Yeah.
then Goodell noticing that,
The tides were turning.
well, no, I think that the Eagles basically all their counterpoints were misproven.
Yeah.
Had to pull that they had to basically kick Jason Kelsey out because he's
They
not an
kicked
owner.
out, yeah, they sent it to a privileged session, which is only the owners and other high-ranking officials that are in there.
And Goodell at this point's pissed off because they didn't vote to pass the reseeding.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Goodell wanted that, to be fair.
No, he said he wanted it.
Well,
All the
that's
things they pushed at that meeting, he wanted. He wanted them to be in the Olympics because now the NFL can promote the
be on
Olympics,
the
flag
Olympics, yeah.
football. More money in their pocket. Okay,
Sure.
right? They wanted to. He wanted to push reseeding because, God forbid, if the Chiefs don't win the AFC West, they can't have a home playoff game.
Right.
You know,
No, the reseeding would be the worst thing that football ever did, honestly,
and
if they did
then
that.
and they could also manipulate the playoff matchups more probably, right? To
Sure.
get more desirable matchups. And then there was the tush push. Three things he wanted done. He
Yeah.
wanted all three
So,
of them to pass.
yeah. Tush
And then
push doesn't go
afterwards, after
through
he got all three passed, then he was going to tell the owners, look at all these great changes I'm helping you implement. Give me a raise. Let's talk about my next contract.
because part of it was, contract negotiations for him, yeah. So, next when the article comes out after the fact, and what was most interesting was Jerry Jones's quotes about it, which
By the
give
way,
Jerry
Jerry
Jones
Jones
some
is like
credit,
your is
man.
like your like crazy like old uncle that just says whatever and it's the truth, but he doesn't know how to like filter it.
Yeah, no. So he goes, as I'm sitting there thinking about what to do, he's like, "Am I really against this play or do I just hate the Eagles?" And he's like, "And I think it's both." And I was like, "You know what? Fucking good job, Jerry Jones. I give you credit for it. I'd have more respect for Green Bay or all the people that were like, you know what? The Eagles run it and they're so good at it,
Well, this is
and I don't
where
think
now
it's
this
fair."
is well,
I'd
no,
give more
Michael.
credit for saying that.
I know everyone's ragging on Green Bay, rightfully so. However, it's to me this is more of a Roger Goodell against the Eagles, as opposed
He wants to
to
play band, and I think
well,
enough
no, he
teams
so
want it banned too.
well, yeah. I think
But they
this
don't wanna, yeah, the Packers, since they have no principal owner, they have no one single owning body, it's not a guy that, because the Packers are proposing it, you can't target it's
Roger
not like
Goodell
the
told the Packers to propose it because they lack a principal owner.
yes, it's not like
And
the
he
Cowboys
threw out
proposed
to the
it.
Packers, well, we gave you the NFL draft, so you should do what I say.
Yeah, it's not like it's the Cowboys proposing it and everyone can gang up on Jerry Jones and say how like,
Or
there's no
even
single
better,
owner
it's
body.
John Mayer proposing. They're like, "Oh, you're an ass clown."
Yeah, or Josh
You're an
Harris, it
idiot.
doesn't matter, anybody. Like, there's no single owner that can be ganged up on for this. So Jerry Jones comes out, says, "How do I just hate the Eagles? Do I not like the play? Whatever." um, what was interesting is that he said having an actual player in there and rule discussions, like just giving their perspective on what it's like, was, I think, eye opening for them. And I think they appreciated a player's perspective where he was like, listen, was the play like difficult, whatever, sure, but it wasn't why I retired. It didn't cause me, none of my injuries that I sustained in my career were because of this, da, 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 the whole thing. I think the players appreciated that. And that is potentially opening the door for having players involved in rule discussions, which I don't know if having active players for rule discussions would be a good thing, but maybe former players that were like directly involved with certain things, like, for example, if you're talking about onside kick stuff and you bring in an old kicker that was like, oh, it was a lot easier to do it this time, or just something along those lines. I think that'd be something the NFL is going to look into and having a different perspective, because seems like for this at least the owners really appreciated Kelsey's perspective and gave them a different point of view on if they should or why they should ban it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. The idea of having more players involved because they're the ones that have to, play the game.
Yeah,
Uh, I would say this though, with it to me, it felt overall that definitely a win for Philadelphia, like in terms of like
huge win.
it was a huge win. But Michael, I would say it's highly alarming when you hear Schefter tweeting out things like the NFL is sick of the Eagles' success and they want to find ways to inhibit them to give everyone a fair shake, or there's teams that are frustrated they can't copy the Eagles success because it was revealed this past week that the Eagles lost to Anthony Patch and Brandon Brown, I think.
They're
They
losing a lot of front office people.
but like this isn't anything new.
No, it's just really frustrating because it's like they don't want the Eagles to have a dynasty. Like the Chiefs
Right,
have been a
that's the thing.
dynasty.
It's the Eagles have completely screwed up the Chiefs dynasty that now you see Travis Kelsey. He lost weight, but he doesn't look like he's in football shape.
He's just old. Like he's just gonna retire soon because he's 35. Like I don't know what everyone's
Like he's
expecting.
well, no, like my point being like you're not getting the future Hall of Famer type production like you were before.
No, but that's on the Chiefs to go find a replacement for it. Like you look at what the
Right.
Patriots did. They always found guys to plug and play as, you know, receivers and defensive players. Like Gronk was the constant, but Gronk was the constant for the second era of the Patriots dynasty.
Well, I don't
Those
think
first
I
10
don't.
years
Yeah,
Gronk
and it
wasn't
felt like the
around.
Chiefs dynasty was literally right after the Patriots dynasty. There wasn't a break.
Like there were two Patriots dynasties. There was like the one from 2000 till like 2010, and then it was from, like, 2011. Like, there was a clear split of, like, of teams that changed from the Patriots being this defensive juggernaut, and then it was, like, the Randy Moss year, and they were still, like, this defensive force, and then when 2010 hit, they changed into like the offensive Brady driven, where the defense comes up in big spots, but especially by the back end of the 2010s when they beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl, the defense wasn't that good in that game.
Right.
The defense sucked against the Eagles. It was good the following year, but it's because the offense was really bad. So like it's it was 2 eras of it, and okay, the Chiefs' first era, it's over. It was 2018 until you wanna call it this year, 2024, where they won 3 Super Bowls, they went to 5. Like, eh, what more are you really gonna it's hard to win more than the Chiefs did. We'll just say that. Like, it's very
I
hard to win
think,
more
well,
than
yeah,
they
and
did.
like what's gonna, the Chiefs are probably gonna go
The
through the
beginning of it
Patriots.
was their
They're gonna go a
offensive
couple. They might go a
juggernaut.
couple years not going to Super Bowls,
Which, holy shit, like, oh my god, the end of the
and then
world?
they're
Like,
gonna have to
Christ.
retool their roster, and then they'll make another run again, like the Patriots did with Brady.
Yeah, like the first half of the Chiefs dynasty was like offense. It was high flying. It was Tyreek Hill. It was they were killing everybody. Mahomes was throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. And then the last couple years, it's the last 2 years really. It's been defense first. They've been dominating defensively and just winning the time of possession and not turning the ball over, and they were winning that way. Now Kelsey is like 1 foot out the door at retirement. Maybe it's time to
Chris
start building.
Jones,
You know
same
what?
thing.
We're gonna build the offensive guns back up, and Mahomes is gonna start slinging it again and throwing 50 touchdowns in a season again. Like, point all this being said is that, like you said, Schefter and the tush push is directly attacking the Eagles, and it's like, what's wrong if the Eagles are gonna be good from 2022 until 2029? Like, why is that such a problem if they're gonna go to 2 more Super Bowls or 3 more Super Bowls and win 2 whatever, whatever. They've been to 2, they're split. What's so terrible if they are gonna go to another one this year, or next year, or in 3 years? Who cares? Like, isn't that part of what makes sports good? Like, when there is a dynasty, there is some evil empire that everyone hates. You don't have to like take it down internally by rule changes. Jesus Christ. You look at what the NBA did, that whole second apron was to try to stop the Warriors. But the Warriors is such a unique situation because they drafted their 3 best players in like 3 consecutive drafts. That's really hard to do. So now you're never going to have a dynasty again because the Thunder, for example, they have all these great young players that are on the team at the same time. It's going to get time to pay everybody. They're not going to be able to because of the second apron. So now the NBA effectively killed dynasties. The Celtics, Jason Tatum tearing his Achilles, not only sucked for this year, it sucks for next year. They killed their whole this whole era now because they're not going to be able to re-sign all of Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Derek White, because those guys, it's going to put them over the second apron. And granted, the NBA is entertaining. They're having good games right now, great playoffs right now. It's fine, but we're not going to see a dynasty in the NBA for a while now. And I don't know if that's a good
Well,
thing. I
no,
think
it's not so much limiting dynasties; it's the dynasties the NBA wants. If the Lakers had a dynasty, Michael, they would ease up on those rules probably.
sure. And I think sports are good when there is an evil empire like the Dodgers, like the
Or the
Astros.
Chiefs.
Yeah, like the Chiefs, like the Patriots. It's good when there is a team for everybody to kind of root against, and it's like they're inevitable, but when they lose, everyone's happy.
Well, I think this is why the NFL. We're gonna get real. If we're gonna be like conspiracy theory ish here with the Eagles, I think what hurts the Eagles is that the influential owner. There's certain owners that carry more influence
Mhm.
with the league office than others. Um, One of them passed away with Jim Irsay, but I think a lot of Jim Irsay actually did he vote against the tush push and then pass away hours later?
Yes.
Not to sound like an a hole. I'm just like it's crazy that like that
Well,
happened.
the last thing he did was voted on the tush push, and then what is basically what it sounds like is he went to, like, go take a nap in his hotel, and he
Never
passed in
woke
his
up.
sleep. Yeah. Really absurd, but
So yeah, R.I.P. Jim Irsay. But
mhm.
like you see, like they had to go to a private meeting with Jerry Jones, John Mara, Jed York. But by the way, Jed York is a horrible owner. He is a
Yes.
terrible owner.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, like
The
Jerry,
Niners are poorly run, man.
well, think about it, Michael. Think about it, Michael. John Mara, Jerry Jones, Jed York. What do they all have in common? That they're all teams that the Eagles get the better of more of consistently. So
What was really it was really
they're
yeah.
crying to the commissioner. Like it would almost this would almost be like if the Bills, the Ravens, name another AFC team, like the Texans owner, all go
Mhm.
to Goodell and be like, man, like, is those like I don't know, like when Mahomes like does that thing where he like fakes like going out of bounds to get more yards and then he gets penalized. We should stop throwing flags on that. It's so unfair that Mahomes does that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they're like saying we need to change the rules because of that. They might just go, you're just butthurt because you can't beat him.
Yes. Well, alas, that's where the Eagles are at right now, where everyone it's like clockwork. It's all year round. Like the draft goes around, and the Eagles take guys that are high on consensus boards and freak athletic scores because maybe that's just a good draft formula. And everyone's like, "Oh, how did the Eagles? They stole the draft again. How did they do that?" Like I don't know. There's
Well,
a
didn't the
lot of
consensus
jealousy
and
that
that
comes
whole
with the
NFC
Eagles.
East had a good draft? Like, if you're the
They did. They
Commanders,
really did.
you what? Like, where you gonna go to Goodell and cry like a baby that the Eagles had a good draft? Like, no one held a
Yeah.
gun to your head and forced you to trade the Cooper DeJean pick to him. You did that on your own.
Yeah, there's a lot of complaining around, and you can only hope that we'll go through the Eagles'
Do you
schedule
have
next week.
newfound? Let me ask you this before we'll wrap up. I want to wrap up with just two last points, and we'll end the show. Then we'll done the show. Do you have a newfound respect for Campbell of the Lions, Dan Campbell, being the only
No,
Eagles opponent to not vote against it?
no, because it doesn't surprise me. Like Dan Campbell, I just feel like as a guy that is like, oh, I mean, they they're really good at something. We want to try to get every advantage we can get too. Like that's just mutual respect. Like that's out of the nature of competition. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions never vote no on anything. Genuinely, I think every vote that comes across, I think the Lions would vote to pass it because they are like, oh, we don't need to ban the tush push to beat the Eagles. That's how I view their point of view for it. They can have their tush push. We're going to beat it. It doesn't matter. Like that's what I think it is. I think it's like the Buccaneers voting to ban it and then posting like, "Oh, we have the tush push stopper," and it's like, well, you tried to get rid of it, so that's kind of soft on your end. Like, you know, a team like the Texans, I'm not surprised. D'Amico Ryans was very anti-banning it because he's like, why would I vote against something just because the team's good at it? Aaron Glenn, the same thing with the Jets. Um, you know, it was just interesting to me. What was also interesting is that one Indianapolis Colts and one Arizona Cardinals did not vote to keep it. And granted, I think coaches have less say than I think we're considering in these rule changes.
Well, they voted to not ban it the first time.
Yeah, they were part of the 16. And then this time around, Gannon well, it's not Gannon. It's like the Cardinals and the Colts both voted to
The
ban it. And
Bidwells
it's
and the Ursays,
yeah,
two
so
longtime
I do
voters.
think that's
Well,
I think the
listen,
coach has
Goodell
less
had
say than we think.
listen. Roger Goodell probably said to those two organizations, "Hey, if you guys vote to ban the tush push, we'll give you stronger consideration to host the draft." You have to bribe them. What are you gonna say? What are you gonna say to or to Jim Irsay? Oh, if you don't vote to ban against the tush push, all those skeletons in your closet, I'm gonna leak them to the press. Like, where you gonna blackmail him? You gonna
No,
blackmail
for
the
sure.
Bidwells? Like,
Yeah.
no, you gotta sweeten the no, you gotta sweeten the pot a little bit. Like
I am
Arizona,
surprised that the coaches, I think, just have a little less say than we understood. I think
of
not
course,
every team listens to their coaches as much,
because
for
they're
that sort of thing.
you're talking about egotistical billionaires. What do you think about Ben Johnson shitting on the tush push, saying, "Well, I've never seen an explosive play from the tush
I
push."
kinda thought that was funny. I think he's a goofy guy, like, he's weird. He's in that weird he's like it's the McVay mind, but, trying to be a little more charismatic and, like, a little funnier, and I think that's what it was. He's like, "Ah, I'm an explosive play guy," and it's like, I didn't take that as like a I don't know, I thought that was a decent spin. Well, I voted to ban it because that's not an explosive play for me, and, like, I thought that was a little tongue in cheek, like, you know, "This play doesn't create a 40-yard touchdown, so I'm not gonna vote to keep it," and, like, that's whatever. And again, we talk about it, I don't know if he like, how much say that he has on it, that could be just a total ownership decision.
Well, no, I think though with last year the Bears infamously had a guard act as a fullback on short yards, which fumbled, which cost them a game.
Yes,
So I think if you're
the Commander
well,
game.
no, I think a lot of Bears fans are like they struggled in short yardage situations. They're like, why can't we try to copy the tush push? That's sort of like the thought process. And then, Michael, like you don't like Ben Johnson. I know you don't like Ben Johnson. He
No,
comes
I
off
think
as arrogant.
he's cocky for
He's
sure.
very arrogant. So the whole
It's a shame, I like Caleb Williams, so I don't know, I'm hoping Ben Johnson can cook with the Bears a little bit.
well, I think with I when well, we'll talk about the Bears game next week, but I just think
Yeah.
that the whole you know, oh, it's all about explosive plays. It's like, nah, man, it's about wins and losses. Like Sirianni
Yeah.
just signed a contract extension. And then you see like the NFL YouTube Twitter people are like, I don't know if he's a good coach or not. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm curious to see if what the Bears do in terms of their running game, because we know how much the Lions really leaned on the run. That's their engine, so it'll be
mhm.
interesting, but that's a discussion for next week.
That's a discussion for next week. We thank
Yeah.
everybody for tuning in. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll catch you next time.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.